Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So in this video, we are going to try to understand why no-code projects sometimes cannot succeed. Or we launch a project with a no-code platform and end up bankrupt in our project. We can manage to get out of it or find a final operational version. So the remarks I'm going to make are remarks that might touch on taboos. Barrel 6, it's even with Bolt, so it doesn't matter which platform. I'm actually going to give you 3 very important remarks that you must adhere to. You need to work with this methodology to be able to achieve a final operational application. And then you can sell it, put it online, and have people use it. So the first thing is in the creation part, actually in the specifications. You know, when you launch your first plan, there are people who either provide very little information or others who create a very detailed specification. And as a result, they can't find the application they're looking for. You should know that the first plan allows you to define and tell your application whether you are working on a web application or a mobile application. So these are mainly the basic information that needs to be set from the start, because thanks to this, the system or the code architecture will change. And also, we need to define the application's name, objectives, design, and basic functions. And of course, if you have a part of my usage, you will include it as well. So this is a prompt that I use to start creating the first specification document. Here is an example of a specification document. As you can see, it is not too long. I provide the essentials, I explain the application's objective and the design aspect, the functionality aspect. And of course, I suggest which technologies I prefer and how I want to monetize it. That's all. You should know that when you launch your first print, you should know that the no-code application will never develop all the features. It will just create the landing page or the entirety of your project with the basic functions. You can see a little bit of the different pages, and then that's when you will start defining the functions one by one to develop them properly. Look at this, for example. When I launched a prompt with databutton, it told me it wants to develop this in 7 steps, so it arrived at 7, and I was the one who added the 8th step, because even though it's mentioned in the initial requirements, it didn't take it into consideration. The same thing with other platforms. So it's not from the start that it will know all the functions to develop, even if you write them down. And in addition to that, if I actually look at the functions, there it is within each step that wants to develop it. You will see that the description side has been developed. That's why, for each stage afterwards, I create a specific prompt, like this one, for example. This is a prompt where I will go into more detail in the section. For example, the user account. When I launch this kind of prompt on, for example, Chat, GPT, or Perplexity, that's when I receive very specific details regarding that task, and that's when I take that result and copy it, either on Bolt or on databutton, so that it can further improve the function. If I come here, for example, to the third task, this is the third task, look at the description that I copied. It's all these descriptions. And this, I didn't put it from the beginning, I added it gradually as I actually progress on the project, and this is very, very important. Look at it, really, I provide all the details. And at that moment, he will start working on the activities, and even with a simple prompt, which you must, of course, adjust it afterwards. So everything you are seeing here is a bit about the communications and settings. Feedback he gave me so that I could successfully work just this feature alone. So everything you are seeing are improvements on that prompt. So I recap regarding the first recommendation. Start by giving a key charge at the beginning that is general, clear, nekidipino, with hamdown, basic functions, technologies, and necessary information. And afterwards, you will further detail each time you take a function separately. It's at that moment that you launch a prompt. First, this prompt before I launch it. To my artificial intelligence, the one that does the coding, I copy this prompt. And I try to develop it on ChatGPT or Perplexity, depending on the tool you are using for AI. Once it gives me feedback on this print on the function, I copy it. That feedback is where I launch it on the AI platform. So that's the first recommendation. Now, the second very important piece of information. Do you know that when I start, for example, to develop either on Bolt or, of course, on taboo topics, Tom, when I ask questions to my agent and when I ask questions that aren't questions, he will go to update the application, meaning questions. In fact, where I ask him to give me the steps to install a database or to create a database, I provide him with information and I need him to respond with steps or information. At that moment, I will not consume my token or use my credit. And that's something many people don't know. For example, here, I will, for instance, ask him, we will ask him to give me the steps to create an integration with the Stripe API. Look here, I come here, I will paste here. This is my request. Give me the steps to integrate the Stripe API into a SaaS application. So here, it's simply a print, but be careful, this one, it will not update the information. And so as a result, I launch this. You will see that here, for example, I have a credit of 761, of 760 parents. It will not be reduced. You will see that he will respond to me. It's an agent, actually. And this agent, I can ask him a lot of questions. And it's important. Because when I develop or when I'm looking to gather information, generally people don't want to ask questions because they think it will consume the credit. But no, it will not consume the credit. He will also help you create third-party integrations to find the right tools that he works with. For example, if I tell him that I want to do electronic payment, what do you recommend? You will see he will recommend something to me. And that's what people don't do. Sometimes when I have an error, I can ask him not to fix it, but to give me explanations about that error. What do you think about it? Or if I want to develop a function, what would I need? So all of this, look, he just gave me recommendations, information that is very well detailed. And there, he gave me how I can integrate my API with Stripe. Look there, he tells me that I need to create a Stripe account and go to the dashboard to retrieve the API. And there you go, you need to do the configuration. And then there he asked me that at the application level, how to do it is to install the Stripe library. That means that there, in reality, he's the one who will do it. But still, he shows me how it should be done in programming, even if I am not, for example, a developer. But at least I understand a little bit of the steps and how he is going to interact. If I move to this step, it's the step where I will ask him to do the integration, Stripe. But at least I actually know the steps. So that is very, very important. And there you go. If you are connecting a database, it's important to ask him how to do it. If I want, I don't know, for example, to create an account on, make it Firebase or even Superbase, I don't know how to do it. So I ask that too. That was a bit of the second recommendation. Ask the questions as long as it's not coding. As long as it doesn't update, ask it the question. There's no need to actually look for the information elsewhere. There's nothing better than this AI that can answer you, since it's the one that will develop. So it knows its limits, it knows a bit about the necessary integrations. So take advantage of asking it the question. Same thing with Bolt, as long as we're not talking about code. Updates, as long as we can ask it whatever we want. It's an AI, after all, that I can rely on for help, that can give me explanations. The third remark, which is very important, is the part about error messages. So, you need to know something. If you receive an error message or it gets stuck, or even sometimes you ask it to fix something, you go into the application, you test it, and it's not fixed. So, what are you going to do? You are going to ask it to fix the error. So, generally, if the platform asks you the question 3 times and it doesn't solve the problem, it means it does a first iteration, the problem still persists, you repeat the same prompt, the problem still persists, you repeat the third time, the problem still persists. You need to know not to get stuck. Even if you go to 10 or 20 times the same iteration, it will not get unstuck. So in that case, you need to change the plan or start looking for the error yourself. It's true that even if you're not a developer, you really need to implement techniques to help this intelligence to focus on a specific error. I'll give you a very simple example. You're trying to create a writing, you've created a member area, and you want the member, when they enter that area, to change their photo. So, if the system, you see, you test, you try to add your photo, the photo uploads, but it no longer displays, you can ask the question several times. It tries to fix it. So, the problem in fact is not at the code level. It may be that the problem is that he doesn't have the necessary permissions to write to the database. And so, as a result, he cannot display an error message. Each time he tells you, finished, you test, it has no result. So it's at that moment that you need to change, in fact, the way with which you debug the problem so that you understand that it comes from a database, and at that moment you will ask him the question. How can I get permission to write to the database? Give me the steps. You see, that's different. And at that moment, you will resolve the steps and follow them. And give your application permission to write to the database. And you will do this without any programming, so you will follow the steps. Click here. Put this, add that, copy, paste. And then when you tell it to execute, now you will see that it will solve the problem. But if you keep asking it to fix the error all the time, it will never fix it, even if it consumes all your tokens. So I take a very simple example. Here, I am on Bolt. On Bolt here, I take the case of Bolt or any other editor. It's just to get an idea. There, I always have a terminal. And that terminal can give me the deployment, execution in my application. So if ever there is an error, like here, which was the case, I wanted to show you this example. I found this error. I simply copy the error I found here in the terminal. So here, this is the Bolt terminal. It's not the application, the display of the application, because today, all code editor platforms, I also take directory tables. For example, here, if I go to the preview section, you will see that there, you will find the same thing. You will find that there is the terminal. If there are problems with the app, with the execution, listen, you copy that error, and at that moment, you will ask it to fix this error, and that's where it will work. That's on one side. On the other side, sometimes you have error messages like this, for example. There, you see an error message, sometimes the error message. Be careful, you might find it on your application on the site. You did an operation and it brought up an error message. So there, either you come here, you tell it to fix the error, and then it will try to test it and resolve it. If it hasn't been fixed by the second or third time, at most the third, take it as not fixed. There's no point in asking again and doing it 1,000 times. What you will do is copy all of this. Of course, when I click watch, it will give me even more information. So I copy everything, anywhere, either on your application or on the website. So you have a message, you copy that entire message. Anywhere this message appears, and you will actually go. You can test with ChatGPT. So what I recommend to you is this version, which is ChatGPT 03 Mini High. If you don't have this version, you can work with version 4.0. But I prefer this one. Look, because it is very strong in coding and logic. And you will see, it makes reasoning. Before it gives you the solution, it makes a reasoning. And as a result, it will give you the leads in which, when you ask your code editor platform to solve this problem, you will add even more information. It tells you, listen, it comes from this file, from this error, so try to correct it based on this information. And you will see, it will change the game and it will further unlock your application and move forward. So what I tell it here, look, I tell it, listen, I want you to analyze this error message and explain it in a simple way with simple terms for a beginner. You can set it for a novice, you can set your level for an intermediate. Intermediate level in programming, good for an expert, it all depends on your level. But generally, those who use this are people who are starting out, who don't know much about development. And I tell it, I want you to identify the cause of this error and propose solutions to me. So, look here, I will simply copy and paste the entire error message. If you're not a developer, you don't need to understand this. I launch it. So, it's going to switch to reasoning mode now. Generally, it takes between 20 and 30 seconds. What is it going to do? It's going to try to analyze a bit all this code, detect the keywords, the important parts actually, to understand the type of this error. If it's an error related to a database, what exactly is the relation with? And there you'll see it will explain to you what it's about. So there it gives you, it tells you, listen, there's a conflict. It detected that there are two more demands using the same key. So there you go, a conflict in React. In fact, that's the technology used. And there it tells you really we have a duplicate static case, meaning in a database, there is information with a primary or indexing key that should be unique, but it found it twice. And so, as a result, everything bugged out. It couldn't display your code or continue with the programming. In short, there's a key problem. So, when I encounter this, I first look at the solution. We even look at it. It actually gives me the solutions to propose regarding this code. So, for me, when I try to solve the problem, if the system couldn't manage to solve it, I will simply copy it, KitTui, and ask it to actually fix it and have a unique key. Just that. In fact, I can copy it. No need to give it an example. It will understand. So as a result, it will follow this path and try to work so that the key is not actually duplicated. Sometimes, with this kind of problem, I say, look, there's an issue like this, since sometimes you ask to change a lot of things, so it happens. So what you're going to do, a logical reflection, you'll go back to your database and delete all the members, for example, that you added. You added several users because you are testing, you will delete everything to avoid a conflict for that user, and you create a new user there, and you test your application. This is, for example, a good method or skill to use when you are trying to debug problems. Use Utro, another AI with the AI, so that you can understand the progress. Because with the AI alone, you can put everything here. You can always try to handle the error, but the biggest problem I encounter, because I do a lot of support with people who use AI for produce and create their program. There are those who succeed all the way, and they tell you, listen, I really managed to make an application from A to Z. I did it all by myself in a week. Here it is. They send you the link. It's very nice. They think about how to market it. There are other people. By the end of the first day, they tell you, listen, I'm stuck on the second feature. It doesn't end. I've used up all the credit. I paid, I don't know, $20, $30. I've used up all the credit. It doesn't get unstuck. And there, when I try to see and look, I find that there it is. He keeps clicking, asking to fix the problem, but as long as he provides more information. So sometimes it's very interesting to change the prompt or to start over at a specific step to make good progress. Don't forget that always in your system, you always have a restore option here, where you can go back to the stage where everything was working, because sometimes you request new features and it creates conflicts. So it's good to go back to the previous state. And also, just to finish, there are a lot of people who create applications to sell those applications. So be careful, you're going to make an application to sell it. Somewhere you will need to have a pre-sale service for those applications. Therefore, it's very important that your application is 100% operational, zero tolerance. So what you are going to do, if I go back to the bottom, don't forget that there are usually packages. You can take it just for a month. These packages, in fact, allow you to have a human with you, a support expert, who will try to resolve any situation. That means you encounter a blockage, boom, you see a ticket. I can't do this. And they do what needs to be done because they are the ones in programming. They are experts, and well, it all depends on the project, but sometimes it's $700 to complete a project in a month. It's worth it because it's the same project. If you are going to do it with a communication company, the cost easily multiplies by 10 for the same software. So as a result, you have to make choices actually. But if we are slowly launching an application and we really want to invest the time and follow the development from A to Z, I can start with the consumption of credits gradually. But if I have something really big, if I'm going to have a very, very long application, then at that point, I need unlimited use of AI. So that's really important. It's that it doesn't end. The projects, you launch the projects to the maximum, it's 24 hours of work, and especially people after a certain point, if it doesn't block you, you had to put it there. And also don't forget that here you can create multiple applications at the same time. So you're not obliged to make just one. If you have several ideas, boom, you launch them for a communication company. That's paradise, I think. And to finish, you always have support here. Don't forget actually to reach out, in fact, with messages to the support. That's very, very important. And that's a little bit what I find on databutton, which I don't actually find on other applications. If ever you have, an error, a problem, and where you have the possibility here to send a message by clicking there, and boom, you get in touch with the team so they can reveal everything at once if needed. And that's very important. So take these good, said recommendations into consideration to simply move forward with your no-code application. So just for the end, I would like you to write to me in the comments. What are the questions you want to ask about no-code platforms? That is to say, I am actually preparing to do a podcast with someone. So either from the Bolt team or the databutton team. Still, waiting for the confirmation of this meeting to do a podcast where I will ask questions and try to gather as much information as possible about best practices, pricing, applications, limitations, advantages, and disadvantages. So if you have, please, 10 questions to ask and you want to ask these platforms, just write to me in the comments or simply write your question. And I will, of course, here do my utmost to compile a list of these questions from my subscribers and actually ask them to these platforms. Please, your questions are very important to me to make this podcast a success. I thank you very much. And there you have it. We've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you want to support me, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can continue creating more free videos on YouTube. And if you want to join my community on Udemy, if you want to have more advanced, more detailed courses with more examples and practical workshops, I have put 2 packages on my website for you. The first one simply contains all my courses on artificial intelligence, automation, and no-code. And the second one is a complete package containing approximately 1,000 hours of training. You'll even find digital marketing inside. Don't forget to simply use the code I created, especially for my YouTube community. It's a code that is YT20. This one will simply give you a 20% discount on those packages. Please note, it's a code that is only valid for my subscribers. YouTube. Thank you very much and see you soon.